Marta was at the community center's event hall, a place she rarely visited. She had been invited by an old colleague to attend a local art exhibition, and although she hesitated at first, she eventually accepted. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, with colorful paintings adorning the walls and soft music playing in the background. Marta walked among the artworks, curiously admiring the details. She was absorbed in a particular abstract painting, trying to decipher its shapes and colors, when she heard a man's voice beside her. Interesting, isn't it? It seems chaotic at first glance, but there's something comforting in that chaos. Startled, Marta turned. Beside her stood a man with neatly groomed gray hair, wearing a casual blazer. He had a warm smile that lit up his face. "I agree. It's like life," Marta replied, trying to hide her nervousness about talking to a stranger. "Enrico," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "Marta," she said, shaking his hand. Their conversation started light, focusing on the exhibition and the stories behind the artworks. Gradually, though, Enrico shifted the tone, showing a genuine interest in Marta. "And you? Are you an art enthusiast, or did someone drag you here?" he asked playfully. Marta laughed, feeling more at ease. "A friend invited me. I'll admit, it's been a while since I've gone out for something like this." "Well, I'm glad you did. Otherwise, we wouldn't have met," Enrico said with a gentle smile. Marta felt her cheeks flush. There was something about the way he looked at her that made her feel seen, something she hadn't felt in a long time. On her way home, Marta reflected on the encounter. It had been years since a man had shown interest in her. After her divorce, she had devoted her life to Chiara, her only daughter, and to her work. She had set aside any thoughts of romance, convincing herself she didn't need it. But now, with Enrico, something was stirring within her. A part of herself she had forgotten, but that was still very much alive. When she got home, Marta noticed a missed call from Chiara. She picked up the phone and called her back. "Mom, where were you?" Chiara asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and concern. "I went to an art exhibition," Marta replied, trying to sound casual. "You? At an exhibition? That's new," Chiara said, surprised. "And how was it?" "Interesting," Marta answered, hesitating before adding, "I met someone there. A man named Enrico." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Chiara replied, trying to sound neutral. "Oh, that's nice. I hope you had a good conversation." Marta noticed Chiara's restrained tone, but chose not to push. 2 days later, Marta received a message from Enrico. He invited her for coffee at a nearby spot. Marta stared at her phone for a moment, feeling torn. On the one hand, she wanted to say yes. On the other, she felt a strange sense of guilt. And what about Chiara? Would she approve? Would she think Marta was being selfish? Finally, she replied, "I'd love to. What time?" At the small corner cafe, Marta met Enrico again. He seemed as comfortable and confident as before, and his energy was infectious. They talked for hours, sharing life stories. Enrico spoke about his late wife, who had passed away years earlier, and how he had rediscovered joy in the little things. Marta, in turn, talked about Chiara and how raising her daughter had been her main focus for so long. "You've dedicated your life to her," Enrico said admiringly. "But now, Marta, what do you want for yourself?" Marta fell silent. It was a question she didn't know how to answer. That evening, as she placed her teacup in the sink, Marta heard her phone ring. It was Chiara again. "So, Mom, how was your day?" Marta hesitated before replying. "Good. I had coffee with Enrico." Once again, there was a pause on the other end. Finally, Chiara responded, her tone unreadable. "Oh, sounds like you're getting along well." Marta felt that something had shifted in the conversation. There was a weight in the air, something she knew she would need to address soon. Marta and Enrico began seeing each other regularly. He would take her to coffee shops, walks in the park, and on one special occasion, to a small local theater. For Marta, every meeting was a discovery. She wasn't just getting to know Enrico, she was rediscovering parts of herself she had long set aside. One evening, as they talked after dinner, Enrico took her hand and said, "Marta, you have such a special way of seeing the world. It's like you're falling in love with life all over again." She smiled, but something about his words struck a chord of doubt. Was everything happening too quickly? Was Chiara right to question this? Meanwhile, Chiara began noticing small changes in her mother's behavior. Marta seemed more upbeat, more independent, but also less available. The calls that had once been frequent often went unanswered now, and Marta occasionally forgot to call back. Over lunch with Matteo, Chiara vented. "She's different. Going out all the time, dressing up more. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy she's excited about life, but it feels strange." Matteo, ever thoughtful, replied, "Maybe she's just giving herself a new chance, Chiara. That doesn't mean she'll stop being your mom." Chiara shook her head. "I don't know. What worries me is, what if this brings back the old Marta? You know how she was narcissistic, controlling. I don't want to go through that again." Matteo looked at her with empathy. Maybe the Marta now is different. Maybe it's time to trust that she can change too. A few days later, Marta called Chiara, sounding cheerful. "Chiara, darling, I'd like you to meet Enrico. We're planning a dinner here at my place. How about it?" Chiara hesitated. She didn't want to seem jealous, but the idea of meeting the man who was taking so much of her mother's attention unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. "Sure, Mom. What day?" "How about Friday?" Marta suggested. "Okay," Chiara replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. After hanging up, Chiara felt a knot in her stomach. It wasn't just jealousy, it was fear. Fear of losing the relationship she and Marta had worked so hard to rebuild after years of difficulties. On Friday evening, Chiara arrived at her mother's house with a bouquet of flowers. Marta greeted her with a warm smile and led her to the living room, where Enrico was pouring wine. "Chiara, it's so nice to finally meet you," he said, extending his hand enthusiastically. Chiara smiled politely, but something about how easily he moved around the house unsettled her. It was as if he already belonged there. During dinner, Enrico was friendly, sharing funny stories about his life and trying to include Chiara in the conversation. But for her, every laugh from Marta felt like a small step away. "You two are getting along well, huh?" Chiara commented casually, though there was a hint of irony in her tone. "Yes, Enrico has been wonderful company," Marta replied, smiling at him. Chiara lowered her gaze to her plate, feeling a wave of discomfort. After Enrico left, Chiara stayed to help her mother clean up. The silence between them was heavy until Chiara finally spoke. "He's nice. But, Mom, don't you think this is all happening too fast?" Marta stopped washing dishes and turned to Chiara, surprised. "Too fast? Chiara, this isn't something I decided yesterday. I like him, and he makes me happy." Chiara tried to keep her tone calm, but couldn't. "And where does that leave me? You didn't even consult me. You just threw this at me like I was supposed to accept it without question." Marta took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. "Chiara, I'm your mother, but I'm also a woman. For years, I dedicated myself completely to you, and I don't regret that. But now, I'm trying to live something for myself." "You always have an excuse, Mom," Chiara said, hurt. "I just hope this doesn't mean you'll go back to being the way you used to be." Marta stayed silent, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. Finally, she spoke with a firm voice. Chiara, I'm not the same person I was before. I've worked hard to change. Maybe you need to trust that it's possible too. Back at her apartment, Chiara sat on the couch, staring at her phone. Her mind was conflicted. Part of her knew Marta was right. She wasn't the same narcissistic, controlling woman she had been in the past. But another part feared that Marta's happiness might create a distance between them. Finally, she sent a message to Anna. I need to talk. Can you see me this week? Chiara knew she needed to confront her own feelings before they consumed her. Anna's office was warm and welcoming, with soft lighting and a tranquil atmosphere. Chiara entered, carrying the weight of her thoughts and a swirl of confusing emotions. Anna greeted her with her usual serene smile and gestured for her to take a seat. Chiara, it's good to see you. What's going on? Chiara sighed, trying to organize her thoughts. My mom, she's dating someone. Anna nodded, waiting for Chiara to elaborate. That should be a good thing, right? But I don't know how to feel about it. Part of me is happy for her, but another part feels like I'm losing my place in her life. Anna leaned forward slightly, demonstrating her attentiveness. And how was your relationship with her before this happened? Chiara hesitated, searching for the right words. Complicated. For a long time, my mom was difficult, narcissistic, controlling. It was always about her, and I had to adapt. But after everything we went through, we finally started understanding each other. We worked so hard to improve our relationship. And now, with this Enrico, it feels like everything is shifting again. Anna reflected for a moment before responding. Do you feel that Enrico's presence might bring back the old dynamics? Chiara nodded.
Yes.
And I hate feeling this way because I know my mom deserves to be happy. But I also feel like she's pushing me aside, and that terrifies me. Anna suggested. Chiara, how about we do a constellation to explore this dynamic? It might help us understand what's causing these feelings. Chiara agreed, curious but anxious. Anna placed markers on the table to represent Chiara, Marta, and Enrico. Marta's marker was central, with Chiara's beside it, slightly tilted forward, and Enrico's on the opposite side, positioned as if entering the scene. Chiara, looking at this, what do you feel? Anna asked. Chiara stared at the setup. I feel like I'm being pushed away from her, and he's taking the place that was mine. Anna smiled gently. And what was your role in that place, Chiara? Chiara thought for a moment before answering, her voice trembling. I always felt responsible for her, like it was my job to take care of her, to make sure she was okay. Anna nodded. That makes sense. For many years, you took on a role that wasn't yours. You were more than just her daughter. You were the emotional support she didn't find elsewhere. Anna moved Marta's marker slightly forward, indicating her newfound independence, and brought Enrico closer, leaving Chiara in her role as a daughter, but in a balanced position. What do you feel now? Anna asked. Chiara took a deep breath. It's strange. I know I should feel relieved because she's finally taking care of herself, but it feels like I'm being left behind. Anna reflected for a moment before responding. Chiara, your mother is finally stepping into her own role. She no longer needs you to take care of her because she's learning to take care of herself. But that doesn't mean she's leaving you behind. Maybe it's time for you to allow yourself to just be her daughter, not her caretaker. Anna asked Chiara to place a marker for her father, who had always been absent. Chiara placed the marker far from the others, almost off the table. And what do you feel when you look at him? Anna asked. Indifference, Chiara replied. He was never there. That's why my mom and I were so close. I had to be strong because he never was. Anna gave a soft smile. And now that your mom has found someone who can share that space, what changes for you? Chiara was silent for a moment before murmuring. I don't know. Maybe I don't have to be so strong anymore. But it's hard to let that go. Anna placed a marker for Enrico beside Marta's, creating a configuration where the two were balanced while Chiara remained in her place as the daughter, connected but free. "Chiara, what do you feel when you look at this?" Anna asked. Chiara wiped away a silent tear. "I think I want this for her. I want her to be happy, even if it means letting go of the control I thought I had." As she left the office, Chiara felt lighter but also deeply reflective. There was something liberating about the idea of letting go of the role she had carried for so long, but it was also terrifying. Back at her apartment, she called Marta. "Mom, I've been thinking, could we have coffee, just the two of us? I'd like to talk to you." Marta smiled on the other end of the line. "Of course, dear. How about tomorrow afternoon?" As she hung up, Chiara knew the conversation would be difficult but necessary. It was time to face her fears head-on. The cafe chosen by Chiara and Marta was discreet and cozy, with wooden tables and the aroma of freshly ground coffee filling the air. Chiara arrived early and picked a corner table where they could talk without interruptions. A few minutes later, Marta walked in, as elegant as ever, with a soft smile that seemed different. Chiara stood up to greet her, and they sat down. "Thank you for inviting me, Chiara," Marta said as she placed her bag beside her chair. Chiara gave a timid smile. "I needed to talk to you. I feel like a lot is happening, and I haven't been handling it very well." Marta ordered a cappuccino and waited patiently as Chiara tried to find the right words. "I know I've been a bit difficult lately," Chiara began. "It's just that, with Enrico, things have changed so quickly. And I realized that part of me feels scared." Marta tilted her head, curious. "Scared? Why?" Chiara took a deep breath. "Because I'm afraid of losing you, Mom. It took us so long to rebuild our relationship, and I keep thinking, what if this changes everything? What if you drift away from me?" Marta took Chiara's hand, her eyes filled with understanding. "Chiara, my love, I will never drift away from you. You are my daughter, my greatest pride. But you need to understand that my life doesn't revolve solely around that anymore. For the first time, I'm trying something for myself." Chiara bit her lip, holding back tears. "I know, Mom, and I want you to be happy. But for so long, I've been the one taking care of you. It feels like I'm losing that role." Marta sighed deeply, squeezing Chiara's hand. "I know how much you've done for me, Chiara, and I'm grateful for that. But I don't want you to carry that weight anymore. It's not your role to take care of me. You're my daughter, not my protector, and I don't want that to change." Chiara looked at her mother, her eyes brimming with tears. "But it's been like this for so long, Mom. I felt like I had to protect you, that if I didn't, no one else would. And now, with Enrico, it feels like you don't need me anymore." Marta shook her head with a sad smile. "Chiara, you will always be important to me. But I've realized over time that I was putting you in a role you should never have had. Maybe that was unfair to you. Now, I'm trying to become whole again for myself. And for us." Chiara wiped away a tear that had rolled down her cheek. "I think part of me is still afraid that you'll go back to how you were before, controlling, always trying to dictate my life." Marta sighed deeply, looking at her daughter seriously. "Chiara, I've worked hard to change. Maybe you don't see it because the trauma of the past still weighs on you. But I am not that person anymore. Today, I want you to have your freedom just as I want mine. Enrico isn't taking your place. He's simply adding something to my life." Chiara sat in silence, absorbing her mother's words. It was as if something was slowly starting to make sense. Marta paused before sharing something more personal. "Did you know that after I separated from your father, I convinced myself that I would never deserve happiness again? That my only reason for living was you? I lost myself, Chiara. And that's why I became the controlling, insecure woman you remember. It was you who made me realize, little by little, that I needed to change." Now, I'm trying to keep walking that path. But I don't want to do it alone. Chiara felt tears return to her eyes. I didn't know you felt that way. I always thought you wanted to be controlling, that it was just who you were. Marta shook her head. It was how I survived, Chiara. But that's in the past. I want something different for us now. And for that to happen, I need you to trust me. Chiara looked at her mother, more vulnerable than ever. I want to trust you, Mom. I want to let you be happy. But that also means I need to learn how to be just your daughter. Not your protector, not your advisor. Just your daughter. Marta smiled, a smile full of emotion and relief. That's all I want, Chiara. I want you to be free to live your own life. And I want you to know that I'll always be here, no matter what. Chiara nodded, finally feeling that the weight she had been carrying was starting to lift. As they walked to the car together, Chiara asked an unexpected question. Mom, do you think Enrico understands all of this? About how much we're both changing? Marta chuckled softly. Oh, he understands more than you think. He knows he's not just entering a relationship with one person, but with a whole world of history. Chiara smiled for the first time that day. Maybe I should give him a chance. Marta held her daughter's arm affectionately. That's all I ask. As Chiara drove home, she realized that for the first time in weeks, there was more clarity than doubt in her mind. It was time to let go of the past and allow both herself and Marta to move forward. A few days after their coffee chat, Marta called Chiara with a lighter and more enthusiastic tone. Chiara, I've been thinking, how about we do a family constellation together? I've booked a session with Anna, and I think it could be good for us. Chiara hesitated for a moment. She had worked with Anna before and knew the powerful impact of constellations, but the idea of doing it alongside her mother was, at the very least, intimidating. Do you really think it's necessary, Mom? I think it could help us close some of the wounds that are still open, Marta replied with honesty. I don't want the past to keep hanging over us. Chiara took a deep breath, knowing her mother was right. All right, let's give it a try. Anna's office was a familiar space for Chiara, but being there with Marta made everything feel different. Anna welcomed them both with a warm smile, sensing the subtle nervousness between mother and daughter. It's so lovely to have you both here. What brings you today? Marta was the first to speak. Anna, I feel like Chiara and I are still carrying baggage from the past. I want our relationship to feel lighter, so we can move forward, Chiara added, a little less confidently. And I want to understand why I'm so afraid of change. I think I still feel responsible for her, like I have to protect her from everything. Anna nodded, her gaze attentive. You're in the right place. Let's explore this together. Anna began by asking Chiara and Marta to choose pieces to represent themselves and the important members of their family. Chiara placed a piece for Marta in the center and one for herself beside it, but leaning forward, as if always in a protective role. She placed the piece representing her father far away, almost outside the configuration. Anna observed the arrangement and asked, Chiara, when you look at this, what do you feel? Chiara reflected before answering. I feel like I've always been close to her, but in a different role. Like I had to take care of her, to make up for my father's absence. Anna turned to Marta. Marta, how about you? What do you feel when you look at this? Marta studied the arrangement with a mix of sadness and understanding. I see that I put Chiara in a role that wasn't hers. When her father left, I felt completely alone. I think, unconsciously, I started depending on her in a way that wasn't healthy. Chiara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her mother's words. Anna added a piece for Enrico, placing it next to Marta, but slightly separated from Chiara. Now, with Enrico in Marta's life, what do you feel when you look at this, Chiara? Chiara hesitated, observing the new arrangement. It feels strange, like he's taking up a space that used to be mine. Marta frowned, concerned. Chiara, do you feel like I'm replacing you? Chiara slowly shook her head. It's not that, but it feels like, for so long, it was just the two of us. And now, with him here, it feels like I'm losing something. Even though I know it shouldn't feel that way. Anna adjusted the pieces, placing Chiara beside Marta in a more balanced position, while keeping Enrico beside Marta in a complementary role. Chiara, how do you feel now? Chiara took a deep breath. It feels more right. I'm still by her side, but I'm not carrying the same weight as before. Maybe that's what I need to accept. Anna added, Marta, Enrico can stand by your side as a partner, but he will never take Chiara's place. And, Chiara, being a daughter means trusting that your mother can take care of herself and allowing space for new relationships. Marta looked at Chiara with tears in her eyes. I never wanted you to feel like you were being left behind, Chiara. My love for you has never changed. But now I want us both to have space to be whole. Chiara wiped away a tear and responded with a timid smile. I want that too, Mom. I just need a little time to adjust. Anna concluded the session by asking them both to reflect on what they had learned. Chiara, looking at the configuration, felt an unexpected sense of relief. It was as if she could finally breathe without carrying an invisible burden. Mom, I think I never realized how much I was carrying. I always thought it was my role to protect you. But now I see that you're protecting yourself too, and that makes me feel freer. Marta smiled, moved. And I never realized how much I was burdening you, Chiara. Thank you for always being by my side, but now I want you to know that I'm okay. And I want you to be okay too. As they left Anna's office, Marta invited Chiara to a dinner with Enrico the following weekend. Chiara hesitated for a moment, but then accepted. I'll try, Mom. I really want to give this a chance. As they walked together down the sidewalk, Chiara felt a warm sensation in her chest. For the first time, she didn't see Enrico as a threat, but as someone who could bring something good to her mother's life. As Chiara said goodbye to Marta, she reflected on Anna's words. The bond between mother and daughter is unique, but love can grow when there's space for everyone to be themselves. It was the beginning of something new, and Chiara was ready to take that step. Chiara arrived at her mother's house early in the evening. The living room lights were on, and the soft sound of an old record played in the background. Enrico greeted her at the door with a warm smile, his demeanor showing that he understood just how important this evening would be. It's good to see you, Chiara, he said with a slight nod, guiding her to the living room where Marta was waiting. Marta looked impeccable, but there was something different about her posture. It wasn't the controlling demeanor of the past, but rather a calm confidence. For the first time, Chiara noticed her mother seemed genuinely happy. Come, dear. Let's have dinner, Marta said, taking her daughter's hand. As they sat down for dinner, the conversation was light. Enrico shared stories of his youth, his travels, and his love for classical music. Marta laughed, relaxed, occasionally chiming in with comments that reflected how at ease she was. Chiara, however, remained quiet for much of the meal, observing the dynamic between the two. She hadn't seen her mother laugh like this in years, perhaps ever. Midway through the meal, Enrico paused, raising his wine glass. I'd like to say something. Marta looked at him, surprised, while Chiara pressed her lips together, nervous. Chiara, I know our beginning has been a bit complicated, but I want you to know that, from the very start, I've admired the strong and intelligent woman your mother has always described you as being. I know she's this incredible person because she's had you by her side all these years. I don't want to take any space in your life away. I just want to bring happiness to your mother and, hopefully, become a part of your life too, in a way that feels comfortable for you. Chiara swallowed hard, feeling Enrico's words break through her walls. Thank you, she replied, her voice trembling. That means a lot to hear. After dinner, Enrico went to the kitchen to wash the dishes, giving Marta and Chiara a chance to talk. Sitting on the couch, Marta held her daughter's hand, her eyes filled with tenderness. Chiara, I'm so happy you came tonight. I know this wasn't easy for you, and I want you to know how much it means to me. Chiara looked at her mother's hands, which trembled slightly, and for the first time, she recognized something she hadn't seen before. Beneath Marta's strength, there was vulnerability. Mom, for so long, I thought I needed to take care of you, that if I wasn't there, everything would fall apart. But tonight, seeing you with Enrico, I realized that maybe I never gave you enough credit. You've changed so much, and I'm really proud of you. Marta squeezed Chiara's hand, her eyes glistening with tears. And I'm so proud of you, Chiara. I know that in the past I put too much on you, in ways that weren't fair. But what you did for me, even when I didn't know how to thank you, is something I will never forget. Chiara felt silent tears streaming down her face. I think I was scared of losing you, of losing this bond we have. Marta shook her head, a single tear rolling down her cheek. This bond, my dear, is unbreakable. Nothing and no one can change that. But now, I want you to live your life knowing that you don't have to carry the weight of the world. I'm here, whole, and I want you to be whole too. Chiara rested her head on her mother's shoulder, something she hadn't done since childhood. For the first time, Mom, I feel like we're truly free. Free from the past, free to be ourselves. Marta kissed the top of Chiara's head, her voice filled with emotion. And that's exactly what I've always wanted for us. As the two sat there in silence, Enrico appeared in the doorway, observing the scene with a discreet smile before returning to the kitchen, careful not to interrupt the moment. When it was time for Chiara to leave, Marta walked her to the door and embraced her tightly. Thank you for giving me the chance to start over, Chiara. You've shown me what true love means. Chiara held her mother close, feeling a newfound alignment within herself. And you've shown me that change is possible, Mom. I love you. As Chiara drove home, she looked up at the starry sky and smiled. For the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. In her heart, there was room for Marta, for Enrico, and, most importantly, for herself. The morning after the dinner, Chiara sat at the kitchen table, lost in her thoughts, as Matteo prepared coffee. His calm, methodical manner always seemed to soothe her. You didn't sleep well, Matteo remarked, handing her a cup. Want to tell me what's on your mind? Chiara sighed, holding the cup with both hands. I think I'm just trying to process everything. Last night's dinner was different. Seeing my mom so happy with Enrico was nice but also strange. It felt like realizing she doesn't need me the same way anymore. Matteo sat beside her, his gaze full of understanding. Does that bother you? Chiara looked at him, searching for the right words. Not exactly. It's more like a part of me doesn't know how to function without that role. It's always been her and me, you know? Even when she was difficult, I felt like I had to be there. Now, I feel like I can step back, but that scares me. Matteo held her hand firmly. Chiara, you're not losing your relationship with your mom. You're just discovering a new way to be by her side. And maybe that's a good thing for you too. Later that day, Chiara felt an urge to visit the old apartment where she and Marta had lived. Matteo insisted on going with her. When they arrived at the building, Chiara stopped in front of the apartment door, now occupied by another family. Matteo stood beside her, respecting the silence. This is where everything happened, Chiara began. The arguments, the silence, but also the moments when it was just the two of us, trying to survive. It's strange, for so long, I thought of this place as a symbol of pain. But now I realize there was love here too. Matteo put his arm around her shoulder, pulling her closer. Maybe that's what you should take with you, Chiara. Not just the hurt, but also what made you stronger. Chiara looked at him, feeling a wave of gratitude. You always know what to say, don't you? He chuckled softly. Not always, but with you, I try. The next day, Chiara scheduled a session with Anna. Sitting in the familiar office, she felt more open than ever to exploring her feelings. Anna, I think I'm finally understanding something important, Chiara began. Anna smiled gently, encouraging her to continue. I've spent so much time trying to fix the past, trying to stop my mom from being like she used to be, that I forgot to live in the present. Now I see that I don't need to do that. She's okay, and that means I can be too. Anna nodded. And what do you think that means for you, Chiara? Chiara took a deep breath, a slow smile forming on her face. It means I can start taking care of myself. I don't have to carry the weight of protecting everyone around me anymore. I want to give that space to my mom, but I also want to give it to myself. Anna rearranged the pieces on the table, placing Chiara's piece in a central spot, surrounded by open space, as if she were free to explore. How do you feel looking at this? Anna asked. Chiara studied it for a moment and responded with conviction. Freedom. That evening, while having dinner, Chiara shared with Matteo what she felt during the session. I realized I have so much more space in my life now. And for the first time, I'm starting to think about how I want to fill it. Matteo smiled. I've always known you had more to give yourself. You've always been so focused on others. Maybe now it's your turn. Chiara laughed, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes. That's it. I think it's time to figure out what I want. And I want you by my side, as I do. Matteo took her hand across the table. I've always been here, Chiara. And I always will be. A few days later, Chiara called Marta with an idea in mind. Mom, what do you think about us doing something together? A trip, just the two of us. A trip? What a wonderful idea. Where? Marta asked, surprised and excited. Maybe somewhere we've never been before. Something new, like what we are now, Chiara replied, smiling. Marta immediately agreed, and the two began planning. As Chiara hung up, she felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time, she didn't see her relationship with Marta as a struggle, but as a partnership. And that was something worth celebrating. Chiara knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she was now certain that she, Marta, and Matteo were ready to build something new, a future full of balance, love, and hope. The morning after the dinner, Chiara was sitting at the kitchen table, lost in her thoughts while Matteo prepared coffee. His calm and methodical manner always had a way of grounding her. You barely slept, Matteo observed, handing her a cup. Want to tell me what's on your mind? Chiara sighed, holding the mug tightly between her hands. I think I'm trying to process everything. Last night's dinner was different. Seeing my mom so happy with Enrico was nice, but it was also strange. It felt like realizing she doesn't need me in the same way anymore. Matteo sat down next to her, his gaze filled with understanding. And does that bother you? Chiara looked at him, searching for the right words. Not exactly. It's more like a part of me doesn't know how to function without that role. It's always been her and me, you know? Even when she was difficult, I felt like I had to be there for her. Now, I feel like I can step back. But that scares me. Matteo took her hand firmly. Chiara, you're not losing your relationship with your mom. You're just discovering a new way to be there for each other. And maybe that's a good thing for both of you. Later that day, Chiara felt an urge to visit the old apartment where she and Marta had lived. Matteo insisted on accompanying her. When they arrived at the building, Chiara paused in front of the apartment door, now occupied by another family. Matteo stood by her side, respecting the silence. This is where it all happened, Chiara began. The fights, the silences, but also the moments when it was just the two of us, trying to survive. It's strange, for so long, I thought of this place as a symbol of pain. But now I realize there was love here, too. Matteo put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. Maybe that's what you should take with you, Chiara. Not just the hurt, but also the strength it gave you. Chiara looked at him, feeling a wave of gratitude. You always know what to say, don't you? He chuckled softly. Not always. But with you, I try. The next day, Chiara scheduled a session with Anna. Sitting in the familiar office, she felt more open than ever to explore her feelings. Anna, I think I'm finally understanding something important, Chiara began. Anna gave her a gentle smile, encouraging her to continue. I've spent so much time trying to fix the past, trying to stop my mom from becoming who she used to be, that I forgot to live in the present. Now I see that I don't have to do that anymore. She's okay, and that means I can be okay too. Anna nodded. And what do you think that means for you, Chiara? Chiara took a deep breath, a slow smile forming on her face. It means I can start taking care of myself. I don't have to carry the weight of protecting everyone around me anymore. I want to give my mom that space, but I also want to give it to myself. Anna rearranged the pieces on the table, placing Chiara's piece in a central position, surrounded by empty space, as if she were free to explore. How do you feel looking at this? Anna asked. Chiara studied it for a moment and replied with conviction. Freedom. That evening, over dinner, Chiara shared her thoughts from the session with Matteo. I realized I have so much more space in my life now, and for the first time, I'm starting to think about how I want to fill it. Matteo smiled. I've always known you had more to offer yourself. You've always been so focused on others. Maybe now it's your turn. Chiara laughed, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes. That's exactly it. I think it's time to figure out what I want. And I want you to be by my side while I do. Matteo reached across the table to take her hand. I've always been here, Chiara. And I always will be. A few days later, Chiara called Marta with an idea in mind. Mom, what do you think about us doing something together? A trip. Just the two of us? A trip? What a wonderful idea. Where to? Marta asked, surprised and excited. Maybe somewhere we've never been before. Something new, like who we are now, Chiara replied, smiling. Marta agreed immediately, and the two began planning. As Chiara hung up the phone, she felt lighter than she had in a long time. For the first time, she didn't see her relationship with Marta as a struggle, but as a partnership. And that was something worth celebrating. Chiara knew there would still be challenges ahead, but now she was certain that she, Marta, and Matteo were all ready to build something new. A future full of balance, love, and hope. Chiara and Marta were in the car, driving toward a small village by the lake. The scenery shifted as they left the city and ventured onto roads flanked by green fields and distant hills. The plan was simple: spend a weekend in a rented cabin, away from everything, to enjoy some time together. Marta, seated in the passenger seat, gazed out of the window with a serene smile. It's been so long since we've taken a trip like this. Just the two of us. Chiara glanced at her mother, the soft sound of instrumental music filling the car. That's true. I think we always found excuses not to. Work, responsibilities, the past. Marta nodded. Yes, the past. But now we're here. And that's what matters. Chiara gripped the steering wheel, a faint smile on her lips. She knew this trip wasn't just an outing. It was a step toward something they had never fully allowed themselves before: freedom and reconnection. When they arrived at the cabin, the sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Marta stepped out of the car and took a deep breath of the fresh countryside air. This is perfect, she said, stretching her arms as if trying to embrace the moment. Chiara carried the bags inside, laughing at her mother's enthusiasm. The cabin was small but cozy, with a fireplace in the corner of the living room and a porch overlooking the lake. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Chiara noticed how lighthearted Marta seemed. She laughed at simple things, shared old stories, and her eyes sparkled in a way Chiara hadn't seen in years. "Mom, I don't think I've ever seen you like this," Chiara remarked as she stirred the sauce in the pan. Marta smiled at her. "And I don't think I ever allowed myself to be like this. Enrico, he reminds me that life can still be beautiful, but you, Chiara, you gave me the strength to get here." Chiara felt a lump in her throat but managed to smile. "And you've shown me that change is possible, even when it feels too late." The next morning, they walked to the lake and rented a small rowboat. Marta insisted on rowing first but quickly grew tired and handed the oars to Chiara, laughing like a child. "Do you remember when I tried to teach you how to ride a bike, and we both fell in the park?" Marta asked, laughing. Chiara burst into laughter. "How could I forget? You spent the rest of the afternoon blaming the uneven ground." "Well, I still believe that," Marta replied with a playful wink. As they rowed, the conversation turned serious. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Chiara said, avoiding direct eye contact. "Of course, dear. Weren't you ever afraid to start over with Enrico? I mean, afraid that things wouldn't work out?" Marta was silent for a moment, gazing at the still water of the lake. "Of course I was afraid, but I realized that the biggest mistake would be letting fear stop me from trying. After everything we've been through, I've learned that love, whether for someone else or yourself, is always worth the risk." Chiara stopped rowing for a moment, letting the boat drift in the quiet. "I think for the first time, I'm starting to understand that." Marta smiled and held her daughter's hand. "And that makes me happier than you can imagine." That night, after dinner, the two sat on the porch with glasses of wine in hand. The gentle sound of the lake's waves broke the silence of the starry night. "Mom, I want to thank you," Chiara said suddenly, her voice laden with emotion. Marta looked at her, surprised. "For what?" "For never giving up on me. Even when we argued, even when it felt like we'd never understand each other. You were always there. And now, seeing you so happy, I feel like I can finally let go of the past." Marta reached out and held Chiara's hand. "And I need to thank you, Chiara, for always believing in me, even when I didn't deserve it. You were my anchor when I was lost. And now, all I want is for you to find your own happiness." Chiara couldn't hold back her tears, and Marta let hers fall as well. They embraced, a hug full of meaning, as if closing one chapter and beginning another. The next morning, as they packed to return home, Marta placed a hand on Chiara's shoulder. "You know, I think this was the best thing we've done together in a long time." "I agree," Chiara replied with a smile. "And I think we should make it a habit." Marta laughed. "Definitely. And next time, who knows, maybe we'll bring Enrico and Matteo? We could make it a big family adventure." Chiara nodded, though she knew this trip, just the two of them, would always hold a special place in her heart. As they drove back, Chiara glanced at Marta and felt immense pride, not just for her mother, but for herself. They had overcome so much, and now they were ready to move forward, together but independent. When Chiara parked in front of her mother's house, she shared a thought she'd been holding back. "Mom, thank you for never giving up on me. And thank you for showing me that it's never too late to start over." Marta smiled and held her daughter's hand for a moment. "And thank you for letting me be happy, Chiara. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." As Chiara drove home, she looked up at the blue sky and felt a peace she had never known before. The future was full of possibilities, and she was finally ready to embrace them.